My name's Bruce McLauchlan from our Wellingborough Church, and I'm going to chat today about opening up. What? There's some sort of problem? Oh, you can't see me. Oh dear, that's tricky, isn't it? What can we do about that? Wait a minute, how about this? How's that? Is that better? Can you hear me okay now? Can you see me okay now? Oh, hold on. Let's try something else. You can't hear me? Looks like technology has failed us again. How did that feel in the first few minutes of our video when, first of all, you couldn't see me, and then there was that slightly scary half-lit picture where you could see a bit but not really properly, and then here I was and you could see me but you couldn't hear me? Probably it was frustrating and wondering what was going on. Is that how it should have been? Was that intentional? Well, yes, it was intentional, because what I was trying to get you thinking just a little bit about was, what must it be like if we lack one or more of our senses, to not be able to see, to not be able to hear, to not be able to speak? It must be really difficult, and we only experienced a few moments of that, and we're fortunate enough that we have all those senses. And just picture someone who is lacking one or two of those. Try and put yourself in their shoes for a few minutes and just imagine what it must be like. Imagine if you've never ever heard anything, so you have no idea what bird song sounds like or music, and nobody can explain that to you because you have no reference point. Imagine you can't see. You can't see color, you can't see pictures, you can't see images. Somebody once said to me, they gave me a challenge. They said, Bruce, how would you describe color to somebody who has never been able to see? It's an interesting challenge, isn't it? I'm going to pass it out to you. After we've done our reading, I'm going to come back to it, and I'm going to give you one possible way that you might be able to describe color to people who've never had the opportunity of seeing anything. But for now, think about it for yourself. How would you describe, for example, the color red when you're talking to someone? How will you describe red? What's your reference point? Okay, I've got a short reading for you now, and then we'll come back to that question that I posed. Any ideas yet? The reading is called Open Up, and it comes from Mark 7. One day, a little group of men arrived, bringing their friends to see Jesus. He was deaf and could not speak properly. Can you cure him, teacher? They asked. Jesus led the man away from the excited crowd. He saw how nervous and shy the man felt, with everyone milling around and staring at him. When they were on their own, Jesus carefully mimed everything that he was going to do, so that the deaf man would understand what was happening, even though he could not hear what Jesus said. First of all, Jesus lightly placed his fingers in the man's ears to show that he was going to cure his deafness. Next, he moistened his finger and touched the man's tongue. At that time, people believed that spittle could heal. Jesus wanted the man to realize that he was able to cure his speech defect too. After that, Jesus looked up as if he was praying, so that the man would know that he was going to heal him by God's power. Then Jesus spoke one word, Ephatha. In the Aramaic language that Jesus and his disciples spoke, that means open up. Jesus' command was obeyed at once, 1,000 unfamiliar sounds burst on the ears of the man that had been deaf. How glad he was that the crowd was a little way off. He found, too, that he could speak clearly. At last, everyone would understand what he was saying. He had a lot of talking to do to make up for all the years of silence, and he began at once. When the people in the crowd heard him, they were amazed. "Isn't Jesus wonderful?" they said to one another. "How well he does everything. He can even make deaf people hear and dumb ones talk." So our reading today was all about listening and speaking, and the shock when suddenly, having never heard a sound in your life, suddenly you can hear everything. And suddenly you're able to speak, to articulate, to speak to people, to tell them what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Must have been amazing for that person to have had all of that suddenly gifted to them. But let's come back to thinking about sight. And I set you that challenge about describing colour. Now, how did you get on? Anybody got any ideas? I'll tell you the closest I've come to solving that particular conundrum. And this is how it works. Let's start with red. I'm going to describe red in terms of heat, because that's something that we can experience with our other senses, particularly with our sense of touch, our sense of feel. We can feel heat. And that in itself takes a message into our brain that makes heat feel red. And that's the closest I've come to being able to explain one of the colours. Using that same logic, what about if we used cold to conjure up an image of what blue might look like? Because we can understand again through our sense of touch when something is cold and our brain feels that moment. And there is within that an element of blue. So that's my explanation of red and my explanation of blue. And then I'll talk a little bit about green. This one's a little bit harder, but I'm going to talk about green having that sense of freshness, the sense of the outdoors, the fresh air, the vibrance of nature. Now, of course, I'm trying to explain this to somebody who can't see that, but they can hear the bird song, they can hear the rustling of the trees, they can touch the stems and the leaves of flowers, so they get some sensation of freshness. And I'm going to use that to describe the colour green. So that's three colours: red, blue, and green. What do you think? Does that work? Can you picture those and try and imagine, if you'd never seen, would you be able to associate red with heat and blue with cold and green with freshness and the outdoors? I think you probably can with some stretch. Now, here's the real interesting thing for you. If you can do those three, I reckon with a bit of a stretch, you can do every other colour under the rainbow. How? Okay, it's a bit of a leap of logic, but this is how it goes, and this is how I'm going to explain it to you. See the picture that's come up on the screen ahead in front of me? Well, that is how a television makes up its picture. Lots of red, green, and blue dots. And with those three dots in different intensities, your television screen can create any color that you can imagine. So from my start point of red, blue, and green, here's my leap to the end where literally I have every color under the rainbow. So that's my challenge to you. Start mixing up colors and thinking, how would I explain them? Hope you've enjoyed this week's little exploration of our senses, and particularly that it's made you think a little bit about how fortunate we are that we have those senses available to us. And just think over the coming week, when your dinner arrives on the table, what it must be like if you can't smell that food. Just imagine what it's like when you're with your friends. I know it's going to be distant with your friends, or maybe it's going to be over remote access like this. But imagine, like it was at the beginning of this video, when you couldn't hear what the other person was saying, or you wanted to tell them something, and inside you were bursting to say, but you just couldn't speak. So keep those thoughts, and as the week unfolds, and just try and imagine on the odd occasion, what would it be like? Anyway, that's enough from me now. So I'll pass you back and look forward to chatting to all of you again soon. Stay safe, stay happy, and God be with you.